Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fierce Honest Hearts. I'm Heidi. My podcast partner is Fadista, and we have Luci Lampe back as our guest. It's been we were trying to estimate about how long it's been, and I'm thinking it's been probably at least 7, 8, 9 months, something like that.
Yeah.
In any event, let me just start by saying that we really felt like we got a lot of the last conversation and felt like it was part one of many parts. And so we'll continue that conversation today. And so, as always, we'll start with a check-in. And I can start, or if you want to start, Luci, I think you might still be doing some tech stuff, Fadista, right?
No, I'm good. I can
Do
start.
we want to do intros? Yeah,
intros. Okay. Well, hello. I'm Luci Lampe, and I am many things. I am a multidimensional being. But my work is as a sex and relationship coach and wild feminine embodiment activation, that kind of juicy realm. I live in the San Diego area in a particular town named Carlsbad, and I'm here with my husband and our 4 kids, and we're nearing the end of summer break, which is bittersweet. So that's and the check-in. Can you remind me? The check-in of how I'm feeling right now? Yes,
Or whatever is going on.
or whatever that is.
Whatever that is, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I think it's a lot of that. It's that transitional space back into the structure of school and the early wake ups, and it's just been such a beautiful summer. I feel like this is the first summer since being a mother. This is the 16th year that I feel like I can actually enjoy and slow down and not have to worry about a launch or a bunch of clients. And I was able to take some space before returning back into the full swing of things. And it's felt really good. And it finally feels safe in my body to do that. That's so big. So now we get to do school again and shift the energy.
Thanks, Luci. I can go next unless you're ready to. You want me to go next?
feel free. Yeah.
So I'm Heidi Ferguson, and I'm the co-host of this podcast. And let's see. I'm a psychic and medium, and I also work part-time at Drexel University as a standardized patient. Did a lot of that today. That was kind of taking a lot of my time. And my check-in is, I just moved 4 days ago, less than a week ago. And yeah, that expression that Luci has is exactly how I'm feeling. And I am taking my time unpacking. And as I'm unpacking, I'm purging more, which is one of my favorite things to do. And then because my bed was disassembled, I was sleeping on a mattress on my floor for about 4 or 5 nights. My bed was disassembled yesterday. And I felt like, I am a goddess, and I felt like even more like a goddess sleeping in my bed, my completely made bed. It was lovely. And so yeah, for those who can relate. And our beds are important to us, at least mine is to me. So thank you. That's my check-in.
Heidi, I know how much you love your rest and your replenishment, particularly in bed. So I'm happy for you. Yeah, and Luci, I feel a little tenderness both in like the kids going back to school and the switch from summer. I know transitions can feel, I don't know, sensitive to me these days. And then I felt a little bit of excitement when you said this was the first year since being a mom that you really like have the pleasure of summer and not having multiple launches and, boss babe hat on. Yeah, so that feels really sweet. Gosh, how am I coming in? Who am I? What am I? I feel like I am often a liminal being. That's my happy place, like poetry, rapture, sniffing the flowers. I can get lost in things, labeled a sensual HSP, so a highly sensitive, sensual, skewed human. When I tell my partner what that's like, he's like, so you're stoned. You're just stoned all the time, because it sounds like when he's, in his younger years, he's like, so you could just get fascinated by anything and lose track of all time. And I'm like, yeah. So I have structures in place. And I think my work is under the umbrella of shadow work and relationship coaching, though I feel like more and more I'm just a generative destabilizer. I'm wanting to just shake off whatever's not the person, and see the true self. So I'm relating more to like Black Moon Lilith these days, even though I think I come across like I'm from Lilith Fair. I'm just recognizing the dichotomy of being gentle and kind, but also being able to guide someone through the underworld, which, because it's tender work, I actually think it does require gentleness and kindness. That's me. Checking in on today. I don't even know. I've been all over the place, but I had some delicious body work done to just kind of heal some stuff that's been up. And I feel just really vibrant today. Really happy to have helpers and healers and people who know what they're doing in the world. Gifting. Yeah, just gifting the temple a little bit of TLC today.
Thank you for this stuff. And thank you, Luci. So as I was thinking about our chat with you today, and the connection that we have with each other is really through Instagram. Like, I've seen the videos and whatnot. And one of the things that I noticed about myself as I'm watching the videos is how I feel like a voyeur. Like, and so I'm saying that out loud, and I'm curious if you ever might get feedback from others saying, wow, this feels like I'm really like seeing you and seeing who you are and your sexuality and your humanity and with your partner, and yeah, I'm curious how people are reacting.
Yeah, I do get that a lot, in different forms, in different words, but the basic message is like, wow, I feel like I'm a fly on the wall and I'm witnessing this, and not in a creepy way, not in like oh, I'm just peeping Tom, but in just a very sacred witness kind of energy. And that's exactly what I've envisioned as a part of my journey in sharing these things. And luckily both Brian and I are just exhibitionists at heart, so you don't mind letting everybody in and watching, not physically there. We'll have a photographer, a videographer, whatever, or just our own selfie. But it's this, there has long been this sense of, this is something that we're meant to share with the world in these moments. However, for every moment that is shared, there are thousands that are not. And so there's also that, because this is a way of life. It's not like, let's do this for the camera and put on a good show. It's just, we're capturing the essence of what happens in this union, which is a reflection of what's happening in our own relationships with the universe, with the divine. So yeah, I love that you said that. Thank you for sharing, Heidi.
You're welcome. I was a little sheepish in saying it, but I was like, no, I think that I can't be the only one who feels this way,
Yeah.
And so to kind of, and the other reason I named it is because I want to normalize as much as I can, is whatever our platform does for those who are watching. I want to normalize that, because what we see on the news and everything else,
Yeah.
that impacts us, and so do your clips on IG. And quite honestly, your clips on IG, I would much rather watch and see, because they are loving and they are
Yeah.
connected. And when I see a couple who is, and my words, are working together to do what you're doing and to come together the way that you are, that is creating a connection. And what I'm seeing in a lot of other places creates separation. And
Yeah.
whatever we can do as humans in this world to connect, I want more of that. And I say, bring it, because we're missing it. And I feel it because I also am an HSP, like, to the utmost level. Sometimes I know that I am, and I'm okay with that. But because I feel so deeply, I'm impacted deeply. Yeah. And I don't know, I'll probably have more to say about that later, but I just kind of want to give a little space here and name that.
Yeah, thanks, Heidi. I love that we started off with this question, because I too feel let in the most generous of ways into your world. And like, it's juicy, it's luscious, it's got all this yummy intimacy in it, right? And like, to bust the myth that marriages get stale and that they can't be ever unfolding and even better over the years. And I love that in there you also place responsibility on each person. Like, when I read the captions and I read like the journey that you two have been on, I hear a lot of radical responsibility for self, and then for the container of partnership, which, I mean, it's like these knees over here. So I wonder if you could share a little bit about your journey together, whatever feels alive now, and how you two have managed to do your own healing work and then create, like, I don't know, I can't explain it. It's like jungle luscious. Like, it's just like so yummy when I see
I love that.
how you two are together, right? And I also love hearing, like, it's not just for the cameras, it's a way of life for us. Like, I want people to really let that sink in. And so, yeah, anything you'd like to be seen and around, how do you guys do that? How do you keep doing that?
My gosh, it has been a long journey. It's been a lot. We would need a multi-part series just to answer that question. But what I will say, let's see, there are certain things that really do stand out, though, as far as the core parts of the journey. Like, for example, the reconnection with my own sexuality. You know, going deep into this, like, journeying. Like, if you think of plant medicine journeying or shamanic journeying, but like doing that with my body, with my pleasure, before I got into any of those things. Very dedicated, you know. And creating more of this sense of trust and safety in my own body that I didn't even realize was not there before. Because it's so normal to, you know, in marriage, go through the motions and, okay, now how many days has it been since we've had sex, or we didn't do it yesterday or whatever. Like, now, well, we'll just do it because that's what married people do, or that's what we're supposed to want to do. And so for a long time, we both operated from that default of what should we do, not what do we want, and are we even connecting to the way that our hearts want to, because our hearts were pretty armored up. So a lot of this de-armoring process for me personally, this is just one piece of it, right, has been my personal pleasure practice, which has been a deeply devotional practice to love and to the divine. And so I've had some crazy experiences with that, of just unlocking things in my body, feeling things just like my heart burst open, my whole body. It's like, it's crazy. But then together, that just me doing that opened so much in our intimate connection, because then I was actually feeling things in my body that I wasn't able to access before. And which meant that he could reach me in places energetically, spiritually, all of emotionally, that I previously wouldn't let him in. So it's kind of this cascade effect where that inspired more of him to explore different things and practices and deepen his presence and really do things out of devotional love instead of out of transaction, and we have been learning these things together. There's a lot more in between there, but that is just one thing that really stands out to me right now that women or watching can immediately tap into within their own selves, their bodies. Now, I mean, any practice that I talk about, that you hear me talking about on Instagram or that I have in a course, it's not just a theoretical thing. It is a way of life. Again, it is a way of life for me. It's not just a practice, it is a way of life. When I talk about embodying love, that is a cornerstone of all of this. How do we keep this juicy? How are we more intimately connected, erotically connected, emotionally, spiritually connected than we've ever been before? Today's actually our 200th month of marriage. I figured that out a few days ago by accident.
I love that. Congrats.
Like, how many months do you think we've been married? Like, how many? Like, I don't know. So I did the math, and literally today on the 16th, 200 months. 200 month anniversary. I feel like one of those moms who's like, my kid is oh my God. So but anyway, this is one of those cornerstone practices is what I'm choosing to do in my relationship right now, in this interaction, in this thing that feels sticky or crunchy or razor sharp. Am I approaching this through the lens of my soul and my heart, or am I acting out of my little self, my self-preserving ego? And it's not bad that we do that. It's very natural. It's just when we bring awareness to that and we choose, in spite of our fear, we choose to do the action that is aligned with love, that we feel that deeper ancient wisdom truth inside guiding us to do. It's those moments, one after the other, stacked on top of each other, that ultimately, if I had to sum it up to one thing, it's that. Because within that is the forgiveness, it's the grace, it's the not withholding the truth, it's not withholding love, it's being fully expressed in myself and himself, even when we're all alone by ourselves in our private moments, to be able to fully express who we are. And there is a trust and a safety within that in a relationship that just allows all the other stuff that you see and form to even happen.
Oh my God, this is so delicious. Heidi, I'm going to pass it over to you once I reflect back, because one of the things I learned from you as I would kind of look over to my partner for like desire and, bring it kind of energy was like, you said once, like, I'm responsible for my own turn on. And that was sort of like somebody threw really refreshing cold water at me, because I was like, wait, what? Like, I always had this idea that like, oh, when like I feel that from my man, right? Which is only one place, one portal. And then presence to me is sexy as all hell. So to hear you talk about him deepening his presence and finding his practices to bring his full self to, it's like, oh, now I'm getting it. And I read something recently that like 60% of women don't feel satisfied in their sex lives. And it has me wondering, beyond orgasms, beyond anatomy, beyond like the things people think it is, if it's because they haven't reached their own depths, met their own selves. And then it's like, how much can your partner really get to, for lack of a better word, emotionally, spiritually, if like you haven't met yourself, right? It just really has me curious, because the study was through the lens of like sexuality and orgasms, and I was like, that's a little too elementary.
It's just one layer.
Yeah. Over to you, Heidi.
Yeah, so following, just kind of parallel to that, I'm curious, Lucy, where the journey started and like what were your first steps to that? Because where I, as Fadista was reflecting and what you were sharing, I thought to myself, wow, I know, like I've done a lot of work on myself and I have more to do, and I'm terrified to do this, but I know that I need to go deeper into my childhood wounds and my little girl work and that kind of thing. And to feel more resourced for myself, because how can I expect others to be able to relate, to be able to get where I'm coming from if I don't even know that? So this is anyway, so I don't know if if you're relating to that at all, but I'm curious, like what the first step was, or where you started in that whole thing.
Yeah, well, the big catalyst was that period of time of about 2.5 years where Ryan was disabled and depressed. So that was the wake up call, because before that, everything was very status quo. We looked like the perfect family. Got all of us. We were literally in commercials too. Like we were the picture perfect family. Our kids were like robots, very well behaved. Oh God, it's so different now. They're just such free, wild spirits, but there's more harmony and connection than ever. This work that we do in the container of our intimate relationship has transformed our family. It's not just us. Like they are incredible little, anyways, I'm going to go off on a whole thing about them because they're so amazing. I'm so proud of them. I'm so honored to be their mother in this form. But yeah, it started with that. That was the initial kind of identity crisis. First for him, because he was no longer able to do the things that his whole identity was wrapped up in. And so the thing that kept him going at that time was video games. And that just kept him like waking up and just showing up to some degree. But I didn't even feel like I could rely on him to take care of the kids while I was going to meet with clients or work or whatever. And my coaching looked a little bit different back then, as you can imagine. But yeah, that set me on a trajectory of searching for peace, because I felt like I was in my living hell. And then that's when I developed that autoimmune dysfunction. I was working just as much as I possibly could, trying to make things work because I was the breadwinner. And I felt like I had a fifth child. I lost my partner and I gained a disabled child. Like that's what it felt like. That a very angry child. And so all of those wounds that you're talking about, Heidi, like the childhood wounds, they came up with vengeance and we didn't know what to do with them. It just looked like anger, rage, chaos. I found Tony Robbins on YouTube or a podcast or something. And just the things that he was saying, I was like, oh, this is resonating. Like, okay, it's not happening to me, it's happening for me. And now it's like, we hear these things like cliches, but that was so new to me and it felt like it hit straight to my heart. I was like, there has to be something in this for me. And I don't think that this is it. I don't believe that this is as good as it's going to get. I just can't accept that. And so ironically, once I did get to a place of acceptance is when things began to actually change, but as it always does. But that was it. That was the initial thing. And then that led me one thing to another. I found an event locally, a one-day event for entrepreneurs, but it was actually about emotional connection and opening the heart. It wasn't marketed that way, but that's what I got out of it. And so that really set me off on a whole thing. And I found a mentor through that. And the same mentor, Ryan, eventually started working with 8 months later. And then we were just like on this snowball of uncovering all kinds of shadows. So lots of shadow work, lots of inner child healing, lots of inner teen healing. And just all of these traumas that we had created together within our marriage because we just didn't know better. That's really where the healing work began. And then opened up into more of these embodiment and somatics and the pleasure practice and dancing, and eventually plant medicines and working with that. But I really believe that we had to be at a certain place in our consciousness to be able to get what we got from those experiences. So I don't know if that really answers the question.
Yeah.
In a long way.
Yeah, no, that completely makes sense. And certainly, has me reflecting more about maybe, I want to say a different path, but certainly moving towards more of that work for myself. Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be harsh too, it can be gentle.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I've done, I remember very distinctly working with a couples therapist. This was, I don't know, 15 years ago or something. And we did a little bit of that work. And I didn't even, and as in the process of it, I wasn't even aware that I had this wound. And it was, it really surfaced. And I was like, and yeah, it was, again, I'm using the word impactful, but certainly that. And also afforded me to look deeper and certainly look deeper and be more curious about myself, because as we're coming to in this conversation, it starts with us. We have to, there's an acceptance, there's an accountability that we need to have, and it starts with our inner child. Yeah. So
the return to innocence, redemption
Yeah.
of all those things that we felt like we had to hide away in the name of responsibility and growing up.
yeah.
It feels like the great reconciliation, within each of us to find that place. And I was feeling so much tenderness when you were sharing about this catalyst, right? And like just imagining you with 4 children and a husband, and then all of a sudden, in for better or for worse, I don't know if this is the right term, like a single parent with an additional angry human in the house, like that feels like such a, called it like, your worst nightmare, like a living hell there, that I just was like, oh my God, my heart aches to even think that is a place of that you were having to get resourced and figure things out. And then to hear your story, I just feel really touched. Yeah. Just knowing that like you made that into something, right? We're meaning making creatures. And then it's like, well, which meaning are we going to put on this? Like, this is my lot in life, or like, we're going to move through this and into something better. Yeah. I had a question, because the term like full self-expression is striking me. A lot of us think we're self-expressed. I certainly keep finding layers that I didn't know, right? And then particularly in partnership, where we might still play some of those games of playing it nice or whatever. I can just feel like, for me, the word is like a constriction, where we constrict ourselves. What would you say to people who might be feeling that way, like they're not fully themselves in their relationship, or in their relationship with themselves even? Or that they feel like, oh, I can be myself on my own, but then as soon as my partner shows up, or my mom shows up, or my, best friend shows up, something goes back in a box, like whatever the something is. What would you say to people who might be experiencing that internalized constriction?
Yeah, and that's a great thing to point out, because it is internalized constriction. When we can, a lot of times when we can even just bring awareness to the fact that nobody is withholding permission explicitly. Maybe sometimes they're like, oh, don't wear that out because it makes me uncomfortable, whatever. But more often than not, it is a permission that we are not giving ourselves. But also more often than not, we might think that we know who we are until we get around someone else. But the thing is that these people are mirrors as well. So they show us even more intimately who we are and who we are not. And so if we can resent that and resist that and fight against it and like, but it's your fault that I fall into this dynamic. It's not about fault. It's not about fault at all. It's just awareness. And the more we can bring awareness to these things with compassion and love instead of judgment and blame, that again, a way of life. It is something we devote ourselves to. But very practically, so I'll just relate this back to my own journey. For me to really access these parts of myself that I didn't know existed, there are multiple avenues to discover that. It's like what's in the shadows, right? We're talking about shadow work. And you can explore that through your triggers, through what you don't what you resist about someone else, what you resist about your partner, your children, your friends, your family, and get really curious about what's in this for me that I am not accepting about myself. It doesn't mean that I am for example, somebody in the family is a raging alcoholic. It doesn't mean that somewhere inside of you you're a raging alcoholic, but there's something in there that resonates with you and your vibration. It's something that you haven't liberated in yourself. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a resistance. You could witness it with love and not as bad or good. So I know that this can get pretty complex and nuanced, and we're getting into the more esoteric things with this. But again, practically, I have made it a practice for so many years now to have a morning time for my rituals. So if there's some kind of energy, some kind of angst or feeling of rush or feeling of unsettledness or resentment or anger or grief, sadness, that's the space where I bring it. I bring it and I let it move through me. And this is when I talk about like the embodiment, the somatics, starting to do that. My very first experience of that was literally just letting out a blood-curdling scream in front of 100 people in a container of an event. It wasn't just like in a store or something. Don't do it there. Not time and a place, people. Time and place. But it's just that releasing of, oh my God, I didn't know that was in there. I thought I was I'm a good girl. I don't get mad. He's a nice guy. He doesn't get mad. But that's what makes us actually, those are the dangerous parts, the ones that we don't take ownership of because they're in there and they're just not expressed. So to be expressed doesn't mean that we're expressing at someone every time or that we're expressing everything that we're feeling to that person. But first, to acknowledge it and just create a space, give it space to exist. Just give it space to exist. So this room is like my sanctuary. This is my office, but also the place where I do my morning practices. And if I'm feeling something or I'm feeling like, I just need to like a purifying surge of this wild energy coming through. I just want to give it space to express itself. And sometimes if both partners feel enough safety to do this, you can, for example, for us, Ryan could witness me in that. And just his presence is so powerful in witnessing that. There are some parameters with that where I'm not being abusive to him. I'm not yelling at him. I'm not calling him names, but I can say what's on my heart and scream like, I feel abandoned. I feel blah, like whatever that is. And there has to be a certain level in that safety again in the relationship for this partner to be able to witness that and not get entangled in the illusions of the fear. Because when my fear is running its course, the last thing I need is for his fear to get tangled into that. And then we're in just a spiral of tornado together. But if he's holding this truth and saying, okay, I see you, I honor you in all of your emotions and all of your spiral of fear that you're in. And I also recognize that this is not all that exists. And I know that this doesn't define you. So I'm looking at you through the eyes of love instead of the eyes of fear and judgment. And when someone has the capacity to do that for their partner, it is so powerful, and vice versa. again, I'm not sure if that really answered the original question, but
Yeah, and then some. Thank you, because I'm just soaking up this idea of like safety and presence for each other. And I just want to highlight the distinction you made because it's helping me to be like fully self-expressed doesn't mean it's always to other. Right. I think I had that story in my head is like, well, then it's got to be like I'm revealing all my peacock feathers everywhere I go to everybody. And just hearing that it's about making space for expression to come through has me feeling like I'm further along than I thought. Right? And I appreciate that. Yeah. Heidi, how about you? You think landing?
It is really landing. And so thank you for that, Lucy. And for those who are not partnered, it's important that we find ways to create that space for ourselves. And there's work to be done to create that space. And I, just from my own personal experience, I feel like I have, and I feel like there's more work to be done. And I've also been able to, and I almost want to say, like, it almost feels like I feel like I need to get to almost a desperate place before I'm able to exert all this energy and whatnot. And I would say that was probably 3 or 4 years ago. Today, it's much easier for me, thankfully. It comes much easier. And I typically do it if I'm in the car. Because I live in an apartment and there are people around, I don't want to scare them.
yeah.
But if I'm in my car and the windows are up, and of course people can hear, but I'm much less unencumbered, I care less. And to be able to give yourself the gift of a primal scream, just to it's one of the best feelings. It's so liberating. I don't know. I'm assuming you've done it, Lucy. I don't know if you've done it, Fidista, but oh my God. And I'm so grateful that I've been able to do that, because if not, I'm like this. I feel like I'm just bound up, and I'm like, I don't need to be bound. We're all bound by something, and I don't need anyway. So we can give that to ourselves if we don't have someone to witness us, is pretty much what I'm attempting to say here. Yeah.
Yeah. And we always have to continuously make it a devotional practice to give it to ourselves. Because he's just because he does it with me, it doesn't mean that not that I have to, but it doesn't mean that there's no value in me doing it for myself. Because granted, there are a lot of times where even if I know that I'm just in my fear ego stories, they got to run their course. And sometimes it's not, he doesn't have the capacity to hold that space, or he just can't, or he's not here, or whatever. And then there has to be that willingness and this ability to meet myself so deeply. Anything that he does for me is bonus, because him meeting me in that sense is not just him meeting me, but he's a reflection of this relationship I have with the universe. So it's like a physical representation of that I get to receive love from and give love to. The whole relationship, really, not just in those moments. But to your point on rage, this is why rage is often an easier access point for a lot of people, not for everyone. Sometimes it doesn't feel safe to feel it for a lot of folks. It's that beneath that is the really vulnerable stuff. It's the stuff that we're grieving, the things that we feel helpless about, the things that we lost hope in, the ways that we feel unlovable and unworthy. All of that stuff is beneath. It's like an angry, feral, animal that was abandoned and neglected. And anyone that approaches it, it's gonna be like, it's gonna want to hurt you. It's angry, but it's hurt, it's sad. And when it's nurtured back to life, that's not its truest nature. It doesn't mean that that's not an expression, but also the more that we can distinguish between this is an expression of my fear that I'm going to honor, and I'm going to give it space to exist. And I also recognize that this is not who I am. This is not my identity. And you can hold that paradox and give yourself the gift of having the human experience while remembering that this is not all that there is.
Amen.
Weird thing.
Well, and I think it's our only hope sometimes is that inner witness, right? That can compassionately watch, like, okay, this is what's happening, and we're more spacious than this. We're more than this. And this part gets to have a valid expression experience, right? I'm thinking of when I was doing really deep, like relational trauma work a couple years ago. Some of it on purpose, some just because life shows you where your work is, right?
Yeah.
And like you're saying, Lucy, like once the rage had moved through, there was this incredibly hurt, sad, deeply bereft, grieving little girl.
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly think I could have held myself, you know, even in my own training, I think I could have. But I remember one day just like shaking, sobbing in bed, you know, just on my side, just like shaking, sobbing, really having no words for like how much the depth of pain that was coming up. And my partner just sat next to me and just had his hand like on my hip. That's all he did. And I'm grateful that he didn't try to like figure it out or make me talk about it, or it was so not a verbal moment. And I think because we're wounded in relationships, we can heal in relationships.
Yeah.
And his hand just on my hip, like I'm here, I'm present, and I'm not here to fix, rescue, you know, advise, or kill your experience in any way. I'm just an ally. Was incredibly reparative. Given that for me, neglect's the one that sticks out. So to have any pattern disruption that's not neglect, it helps me come back to earth and come back to my body and come back to like, but this is my life now. With, like you said, this dual vision of, and that person, that part of me gets to grieve. It's alchemy, right? It's really sacred work that we're talking about here. Yeah.
And there's a lot in there of co-regulating that we cannot do on our own. This is the paradox too. It's like there are things that we must do to meet ourselves and let ourselves ultimately be met by love. And then there are things that can really only be repatterned within the context of relationship. So it's just really ultimately trusting that whatever is perfect for you, designed for you to be learning and growing and healing through right now is what you have. And you don't have to go try to get into a relationship just so that you can heal your relational wounds, you know, for those wondering out there listening maybe. But if you're in it and the opportunities are presenting themselves, then that is no coincidence.
I see this a lot with clients who are like, well, I wish I had a partner so I could practice X, Y, and Z with. And I'm like, look around. You know, like, who is vexing you? Who activates you? It does not have to be an intimate partner, though I understand the yearning for that. That like truly just check in, and you have partners in the dojo to practice with. Even if you are building up towards, you know, a high stakes relationship that's intimate, most people, this is my hope anyway, is that they have at least one high stakes relationship, or one even like medium stakes that they can like do the reps with, right? Like, okay, it's not my daughter, but it's my colleague, right? It's not my mom yet, but I'm doing this with my cousin, like whatever. This place of like making sure you're lifting the weights you can lift, and then challenging yourself to lift a little more and build those muscles, right? How you're smiling and nodding, Heidi. So I'm curious over there.
There's always someone. there's always someone in the dojo who is mirroring us, right? And whether or not we see it that way, that is what's happening. And I'm smiling and laughing because of, because of my own personal life right now. There's a relationship that is many decades long, and we're working on it, and it's very close. And it's what happens is when there has been no repair after decades and decades, and we're still in a relationship, probably until one of us leaves this earth, we're in it. And so we can continue to avoid, and we can continue to act as if nothing's happened. We can continue all that kind of I'm going to call it BS, or we can do the heavy lifting and make that choice to start the hard conversation and say, hey, look, this is not working for me. I would like something better. I think that we can have something that's more meaningful. Are you willing to do it with me? And just simply, I use the words, I'm like, simply, is it simply put? It's nothing is simple, right? But to have the courage, that is what it is, really, to have the courage. And that's because to create the courage for ourselves is because we've done work. That's where it begins. So if for those who are listening, if you are wanting to have these hard conversations to bring forth these relationships that you might want to have in your life, the work, of course, as we've all agreed here, starts with ourselves. And until we can really get clean and clear about what that is and what those issues are that we have within ourselves, it's going to be a lot easier to move forward with others in whatever relationship is. Can be family, can be a loved one, it can be a romantic partner, it can be a friendship, whatever that is, a colleague, like Fedista said. So there are many opportunities to go into the ring, go into the dojo and say, okay, let's do this for the both of us, because only then will it be a win-win.
Yeah. Even when you go to the grocery store or you go to anything, everyone around you is your teacher. And I think if I were to simplify it to one thing, it's just surrendering to love. So if we're really surrendered to love, then we're naturally going to, not naturally, like we're going to probably fight it tooth and nail, but it's going to often guide us to set our egos aside and do the challenging thing that initiates repair, or maybe acknowledges something that you're ashamed of or afraid of being judged for, all that stuff. It's
Yeah. Thinking of our better angels, right? Like in those moments. And then I actually have a question for you, Luci, from what you just said around being able to surrender to love. And I find in my work, particularly, I'm going to say almost everyone I work with, and I'm realizing I'm generalizing here, is like, but they're coming in with a wound from love, right? So not necessarily, it presents as a wound with mom or a wound with their ex, but my sense is the wounding is with love, right? The trust that's been lost is with love. So without going, because I know we've named a lot of things like shadow work and stuff, but how does someone reconcile feeling wounded by love and moving all the way to like being surrendered?
Well, I think the first thing is to recognize that that was not love. Because love, now that might be transactional love or conditional love, but real love is something we can't even begin to actually understand. When I think of love, when I talk of love, I'm referring to this consciousness of the divine, that it's complete unconditional love. There is no fear in it. There is no harm. There is no manipulation. There is no expectation that I'm doing this and you're going to do this. But when we're really surrendered to that, that's why I like to talk about it as love, capital L love, not love, romantic love. So being surrendered to love to me is being surrendered to the divine, to that soul message, to what my heart, because for me, the heart is the communicator, like a not a megaphone, but like some kind of communication homing device for what that love is wanting you to do. So when I say to be guided by love, is to be guided by that soul calling, that connection, that consciousness that is just pure acceptance and peace. And as opposed to when we do something out of the fear and the ego. And again, ego isn't bad. It's part of who we are. We can use ego in service to soul. But what we often see is ego being in opposition to soul, being kind of like, no, I need to self-preserve and I need to protect myself and I don't want to get hurt again. So opening to love is just opening to that presence, that essence. It's not about opening to a person. You might get to open to love through a person, and that might be your practice in that. But yeah, a lot of people have been wounded in relationships. There's a lot of wounding in just opening themselves to experiencing love only to be let down or to be betrayed or to be abandoned. And there will always be a risk of that. But the love itself does not abandon. So again, these are some things that I know might be getting a little more into the realm of the spirituality and the esoteric things. But I mean, for me, that's inseparable from what I experience in my relationship. That me opening to that love is the only way that I'm even receiving his love. It's scary to receive this depth of love. There was a post I made yesterday about just like being obliterated by it. Like it's terrifying to be obliterated by it, but that's kind of what it needs to happen. So yeah.
Thanks for that distinction. I think it's important that we distinguish between like the human love and sometimes the wounded love, and then the kind that, you know, we're holding space for, which is very, it feels like it's just everywhere, right? Everywhere.
Yeah, it's expansive.
Yeah.
It's
expansive.
Yeah.
That feels beautiful. Heidi, anything else? I know we could go on for hours here, but I want to honor time.
No, I think I'm feeling very filled up and very so no, the answer is no. I don't have any more questions right now. I just want to say that I'm feeling really filled up by this conversation, how meaningful and how lovely it's been, and to be in the presence of you two goddesses. There's nothing better, really wonderful. Yeah, thank you.
Right back at you. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and Luci, thank you for just continuing to share more of your heart with us, and you know, modeling. I think just the download and transmission you bring, I continue to be inspired and to find other little nooks in me, you know, light shadows that are like, ooh, yeah, like I want to move towards that. I feel pulled and drawn that way. And you do it with such I don't know, I just marvel at it because it feels, because it's your way of life, it doesn't feel curated. It just feels like, oh, you're getting to see your day, and your day looks like luscious and yummy, and you have kids. And I know there's a real life, you know, of tending that's also probably a part of it. But it all feels very devotional to me over here. And to have a life that feels devotional feels like, yeah, just is a hell yes over here. So
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for sharing more of you with us. I feel let in, and yeah, just closer to you in our time together.
Yes, I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you, Luci. Yeah. Shall we do a question?
Oh, yes, you're talking about, is it like your chat pack or something?
Well, I came up with, I'm sure it's in the chat pack somewhere, but
Okay.
my cards are still packed. So I came up with this last night because I was lying in bed. Okay. What is the best or one of the best decisions you've ever made in your life?
Mm.
No.
You know, in retrospect, this could have seemed like a really, what's it called? Hasty and I gotta share. I gotta share two. Two of them. Both of them seemed extremely hasty and maybe irresponsible, for sure. Yeah. And the first one was getting married at 20. We didn't know what the fuck we were doing. We don't have a single thing figured out. And I mean, I don't think that you have to. I think that's the illusion. But it just felt this was a part of our path. There's that. And exactly the timing that it happened. And then also the trip to Peru that I took earlier this year, which I decided the week before it happened. In the middle of Ryan's 41-day fast. So I'm like, I trust you. You can take care of our family, take them to school. I'm going to a different country to visit my motherland. And that was one of the best decisions I've ever made for our family too. I came back with so much magic and so much ancestral just connection into the earth. And that was a moment where Ryan, we're talking about this a couple days ago. He said, that's when you came back from that trip. It was like something in you was just whole in a way that I've never experienced. And we were, for the first time at this depth, on the same wavelength, like on the same, in the same exercising of our faith, basically. Like he wasn't just taking these crazy leaps and I'm like tolerating it. Like I'm like in it, Anyway, so
Wow.
two best decisions.
And I love that they probably on the outer, in the natural to others might not have looked like they made sense. And yet they
Yeah.
are the ones you're naming as some of the best decisions of your life.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Heidi, do you want to go? Do you have yours?
Yeah, I'm ready. So it would have to be my personal growth, starting of my personal growth, which was back in 2006, and actually a little bit before that. And as I began that, I could never have imagined what would have unfolded and what would have come from that. This is one of the things. And yeah, and the gifts just keep on coming. They just keep on, I'm receiving them, and life-changing. Yeah.
I had quite a few pop up. So I was like, oh, and then I loved Lucy that you shared too, because then I was like, oh, permission. Okay. I think moving from LA to New York when everyone was like, what? Your whole life is here. And my whole heart felt pulled to New York City at the time. And I didn't have a job. I had just broken up with my partner. Like nothing made sense to people. And I just stuck to, yeah, that's what I'm doing. And it's okay if you don't get it. Right.
Yeah.
Because I do love it here. And then I think really, really choosing to date off type, my type having been rock and roll frontmen and poets, jazz drummers, and wonderful, amazing, passionate humans who might not work in the logistical day-to-day of life. Amazing people though. And then really choosing, like, I want to find somebody who is consistent and dependable and still like a juicy life with. That was a big leap of faith to leave a familiar kind of energy for something that my heart knew it needed. Even if, there was a lot of like humbling myself to even consider it. Yeah. Because, and I'll say this because I had friends that were like, your type's a little sketchy. Like maybe you need to humble yourself and give this guy a chance. And I'm glad I did, because almost 8 years later, like we get to do life together. Yeah. But the ones that feel counterintuitive or counterinstinctual sometimes, maybe counterinstinctual is a better word, seem to be better in my world.
Yeah.
Thanks for that question, Heidi.
You're
Yeah.
welcome. Yeah.
Good question.
Thank you again for being here, Lucy. And I feel like I want to have a whole episode on plant medicine down the road.
Oh, we could. Oh, there's a lot to share.
Yeah. And just, again, thank you both for being the kind of friends who can sit and revel in all of this with such joy and care.
Thank you,
And
friend.
thank you for holding
you.
the space.
And thank you, audience. So for those who are watching or might watch later, please hit subscribe, send a comment, send a like. We'd love for you to join us on YouTube, follow us. We are Fierce Honest Hearts. We are Conscious Friendships on IG, all the things. Anyway, love you all. Until next time.
Bye.